When we are in a lying down position, and I didn't explain this on the other side, but I'll explain it now. When the leg is out flat, the iliopsoas complex for most of us is already getting a bit of a stretch. Even though that's not necessarily how it quote unquote should be, that's generally how it is because we sit for a good portion of the day instead of having our legs out. Um, and as a result, being under more tension, it actually makes it a bit more difficult for us to get in to the muscle fibers. Okay. In this particular instance, then we want to provide flexion at the hip so that it gives us a little bit of space, a little bit of slack in order to get in there with. So to do that, find the ASIS, that frontal hip point, and then we're working just a little bit superior to that hip point, and then just on the inside edge of the bowl of the pelvis. Using your fingertips, both hands together, start to work your way over the crest of the pelvis and down into the bowl. And so our pressure ends up being down towards the ground, but also a little bit pressing into the bowl of the pelvis, pressing into the ilium. And then we'll keep an eye on their expression and also verbally check in. And we've got the thumbs up here. So we can pause here. And after a certain amount of time, you might feel a little bit of a release. You might feel a little bit more space available. I would encourage you, as long as it's fine for your client, to add a little bit of extra weight to get into that extra space. Remember, for any of the points that we might come across here, and any of the trigger points that we might come across here, they might be referring pain either proximally or distally. So that's one of the tricky elements of the iliopsoas complex, is that it could cause issues at the hip or in the low back. After being in there for a little while, we'll release that. And for our second touch, we'll move just 0.5 centimeter more superiorly. So a really small adjustment. And then we'll head over the edge of the ilium and into the bowl of the pelvis once again. That gets us onto slightly different fibers of the iliacus. And based on how much their body allows us in, we can apply weight. Similarly, in this second point, if we find that there's a little bit of extra space that becomes available, you can settle into that as long as that works nicely for them. And that's our second touch here. We'll go for one more touch after this one when it feels nicely cooked. Same movement, about half a centimeter more superiorly. It's really small edits here as you then settle back in, head onto the inside edge of the pelvic bowl. And this usually gets you deeper into the pelvic bowl. Pay attention to any sensitive points or extra sensitive points because working here in the iliacus tends to be a little bit more intense than other things anyway. But if we get any sharpness or any referral sensation from the spots that we're working on, it's a great sign for us to pause there and wait until those referral sensations and that sharpness diminish, but also the overall intensity diminishes. You might have heard me on the other side use a visual analog scale, so give that sensation a number out of 10, 10 being the most unbearable sensation and 1 being next to nothing. Usually what we're looking for is about a 7 or an 8 on people's intensity scale. And then we wait there until we feel a change of 3 to 4 points. So I'll usually also say to people if they say, okay, it's a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, okay, let me know when it is a 4 out of 10, for example, or a 5. And that tells me that then I've waited long enough to get some releasing of that, some solid releasing of that trigger point. This side is less intense, isn't it? Yeah, there you go. Found a nice little trigger point on the other side. So we can release that when we're done.